Hi, and welcome to another video. Today I thought I'd talk about the surfaces that I usually use to paint on. And then I'll do something that I've never done before, where I prepare a board by collaging different papers, fabrics, and textures onto the board before using it as a surface to paint on. So usually I do paint on boards, but these are just gessoed boards. So the surface is very smooth and there's not much texture on it before I start painting. So I'll just prime the board with gesso before painting. And this will be on the sides and the back to prevent the board from warping. Or I'll also use pre-prepared panels, such as this one by Jackson's, which is a smooth painting panel that has been pre-prepared and it's ready to paint on. And this one is done on a smooth canvas board, so it's been primed already. And I love working on boards because you can build up a lot of texture and then scratch into the surface without really damaging the surface at all, and you can sand over it as well, and you're just able to build up really lovely textures on the surface. So these are both work in progress boards that I'm currently working on. So another surface that I love to work on is watercolour paper, and I tend to go for quite thick paper. This is 300 GSM watercolour paper, and it has a textured surface to it. I don't know if that will really pick up on the camera, but when you paint over it, you can see some of that surface texture will show up underneath the paint, which is something I really like. But then other times I'll want to work on quite a smooth surface that's similar to my boards, and I really love to work on gessoed card. So this is just typical cardstock, and it had an ivory colour to it, but once I've gessoed it with 2 coats of gesso it becomes quite white. And this is a really lovely surface. It feels a bit like wallpaper once you've gessoed over it, and that creates a really nice smooth surface where you won't tend to see any texture underneath the paint. All the texture will be from the marks that you're making with the palette knife, for example. So those are the main surfaces that I like to work on: gessoed card, watercolour paper, gessoed boards and canvas boards. So today I've got 2 primed panels, which I've primed them quite badly actually, because I didn't let the first layer of gesso dry before I rested them on top of a painting pot. So it's got this circle in the middle, but it shouldn't matter at all. They are primed, so they'll be fine. And I'm going to layer up some materials on top of this to create an interesting surface to then work over when I'm painting. And I've just got some toned tan paper by Strathmore, some blind fabrics, and then some linen fabric, and then some offcuts of the watercolour paper. So that's the watercolour paper I showed previously. A piece of canvas paper. I've got this circular pad that I never really use because of the circular shape, so I thought I'd just try and use some of that as well. And yeah, that's another piece of watercolour paper. So I'm going to build those up to create an interesting surface on the board. And I'm going to just stick it down with some gloss medium. So this is the Liquitex acrylic medium, gloss medium. So I'm not going to think about composition too much, apart from maybe thinking about how I usually set up a painting. So some diagonals in the foreground creating the landscape, the sky area, and a few vertical elements. I think that's what I'll try to go for, but I won't tie myself too strictly to a composition. It'll just be about layering these materials up and seeing what I can get. And I think I really want torn edges with the paper. So I think a diagonal element like that with some of the paper at the bottom, with this torn edge here. Make sure it's really well stuck down. It would be useful if I had a roller to do this, to make sure there's no bubbles left underneath, but I've just got the inner tube of a piece of wrapping paper or something. And I think I'll try some of this Strathmore toned tan paper. Actually, a handy tip would be to get a piece of baking parchment, because then you can just go right to the edges on these strips that you're adding on. So this is all about building up an interesting surface for you to then paint over. And I'm really excited because the initial marks of my paintings are usually ink. I'll go in with acrylic ink to start with and create washes and build up the composition that way, and the ink will react differently with the different surfaces that are now on this panel, which I think is going to be really exciting. So I think I want a big fabric element in here as well. Maybe some of this blind fabric actually. Yeah, I think I'll go with that, because that's a really nice texture. It's got these lines in it. I think I'll pop that on. And so I won't be able to stick this down by applying the gloss medium to this. I'll have to apply it to the board first and then stick it down. Paint over this one as well with the gloss medium, just to make sure it's completely adhered to the panel, and that will give it a shiny surface to work over, but I don't really mind that. It's all about adding this interesting texture on and the way materials are going to act on top of this surface. One more strip of this paper, because I'm not keen where all of these things are joining, so I'm going to cover that with a strip of paper. And sometimes it's nice not to have the lines running the full way across the panel. So that's my prepared panel, and I'm really interested to try and work over this in paint now. I think when the ink or the paint goes onto this paper and then changes to board, to fabric and to a different surface of paper, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, and hopefully we'll still be able to see these layers of texture that we've built up within the final piece. So I've obviously not been too precious here because I know that this is going to be painted over, so it doesn't really matter what I do with this surface, but it just adds that element of interest. So I'll crack on with the next panel. And see what I come up with.
Just where it was needed, gleamed in black as night, cloistered in injustice, dead in the eye of time.
I didn't really mean to, but peeling the paper back off that area of gloss medium has left some little bits of paper stuck to the panel, and that's going to create some really interesting texture as well, I think.
The swallows will be here by dawn. When we're finally sober, they'll be gone. The trees will bloom and ice will melt. We'll always remember how it felt.
So I'm not too keen on this area where that joins and creates an L shape, so I think maybe another vertical element here. I know I'm doing something quite similar to what I had before, but I kind of want these two to work as a pair, so I think that would be good.
Gleamed in the blackest night, cloistered in injustice, dead, and in the eyes of time, nobody's losing.
I realised actually that when I put this vertical piece in here, I create a triangle here, which I really don't think I want to do. To keep that vertical element and actually do something more like this instead.
We'll always remember how it felt.
I do really want the lower portion of these to be really quite layered with texture, like the earth is layered with strata lines, that kind of thing. So adding more into here I think will work. So that's it, my two prepared textured panels where I've been layering watercolour paper, Strathmore toned tan paper and some blind fabrics over this wooden panel. So yeah, I'm really excited to paint over these now and see how the lines and texture influences what I'm painting and shows through in the final piece. So in a future video I'll show the process of me painting over these. but let me know if you have a go yourself. I'd love to know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.